What's up, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube? Boogie2988 coming at you live once again through the power of the internet. And I took a little time to think about this before I decided to make this video, but I want to talk about Idubbbz. And I have some personal stories to tell about Idubbbz as well in this video. So sit back and let's talk about what's going on with Ian. So Idubbbz has taken a hell of a beating when it comes to his career lately. He's gone on a lot of podcasts and talked about how much he regrets his old content. And that eventually culminated in this video that he uploaded a couple weeks back called I Miss the Old Idubbbz. And I'll summarize the video for you. Basically, Ian says he regrets the old content that he has made, his certain use of certain terms, his sense of humor, his edgy sense of humor. And he's grown as a person. He looks back on that and cringes, doesn't want to be that person anymore, and wanted to make this video to take full responsibility for the harm that he thinks he's caused. And I have so much to say about that. I personally have watched Idubbbz forever. Bad Unboxing, his Kickstarter crap, all of that stuff was excellent. Content Cop, I actually really enjoyed. Though I have a bit of a history with that, so we'll get into the history about that in a second, but for the most part, I like most of what Ian did. There's definitely things I didn't like that he did, though. For example, I grew up on George Carlin, Richard Pryor, even some Lenny Bruce, if you know who that is. I know edgy comedy. I like edgy comedy. I still consume edgy comedy to this day. Sometimes I'll watch Dave Chappelle. I don't agree with everything Dave has to say, but I'll watch it. I'll see Louis C.K. clips and I'll laugh at him. I don't always agree with everything that Louis has to say, but that's the thing about comedy. Sometimes we don't agree with the person, but we can still get their point. We consider the point, we move it out of our brains, and we move forward, right? Most of the time when I hear a point I disagree with, it just reinforces my beliefs that I'm correct. Louis C.K., Dave Chappelle, Lenny Bruce, Andrew Dice Clay, these people are never going to help me form an opinion. They're comedians, and that's how I always viewed Idubbbz. And in fact, if you followed me for the last 17 years on YouTube, you'll know that I've definitely let my edgy sense of humor come out from time to time. I don't really mean the things that I've joked about or the things that I've said. That's the comedy for me, is that I don't mean it. And when I was watching Idubbbz back in the old days, I had grown out of that sense of humor for the most part. I wasn't really about it. I didn't like it when Ian did it, but I liked the rest of what Ian was doing, and I'm mature enough and I understand comedy enough to where I could overlook the things he did that I didn't like, right? The same way I overlook Dave Chappelle's opinions I disagree with, or the things that Louis C.K. has to say. And I'll tell you what I liked about old Idubbbz. I liked it when he ate pickles in a sewer. I liked it when he ate trash with H3. I liked it when he records squirrels on Squirrel Cam. I enjoyed the bad unboxings. I liked it when he broke stuff. I liked it when he worked with Max Mofo and Filthy Frank. This was my kind of content, and I was able to look past the things I didn't like about Idubbbz at the time to enjoy those things. And I think I speak for the majority of his audience when I say that. I don't think anybody was agreeing with or forming their opinions based on the racial things he would say or the edgy comedy. I'm sure there's a minority of people out there who tuned in specifically for that. But the majority of us tuned in because he's just an entertaining dude. He's so entertaining. And that's why it sucks to hear him say something like this.
I'm not confident in my ability to entertain, and I think if I had to rely on my personality to entertain people, that I wouldn't have any amount of success.
Look, I don't agree with Ian that a lot of the things he said and did were bigoted and not great. And I have no problem with him looking back on that and cringing and wanting to grow up. By the time you're 30 years old, if you don't look back at the things that you did when you were 20 and cringe, you probably haven't developed very much. So I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is the fact that I think Ian is under the impression that the reason we were tuning in was for the bigotry. That we were tuning in because he was a bigot or a racist. I was tuning in regardless of that stuff, but I skipped it. I didn't like it. It wasn't for me, and I know the majority of my friends feel the same way. He also unlisted the Keemstar content cop. And even Keemstar replied to that video by saying it was a good one, and Keemstar said that it was good that people were criticizing him for the mistakes that he had made. But Ian says that video is very cruel and that it needs to be removed from the internet and that he's ashamed that he made it. But even if the person you're making that video about says it's not cruel, then that's pretty weird to me. I mean, Keemstar's a grown man. I did a interview with him not too long ago, and in that interview, he admitted he can take it. He's admitted that he's made mistakes and that he deserves the punishment for the mistakes that he's made, and that Content Cop was one of those pieces of punishment. And the reason I'm making this video is because I have a history when it comes to Content Cop. But back in 2019, when I was thinking about deleting myself from both YouTube and the real world, I met Idubbbz because people like Keemstar had told him that I was worried that a Content Cop was going to get made on me and that it would be impossible for me to have a career after that. Well, me and Idubbbz talked about it. He said no Content Cop like that was ever going to come, that he'd read the mega thread and that he knew it was bullshit, and that he was never going to make a video about that because there was no reason to, that I was also not relevant enough to make it. But here's the thing. People like Sunny V2, Turkey Tom, they've made those videos ad nauseum, going over that mega thread over and over and over again, calling me out on the things that I actually did and perpetuating a bunch of lies about things that I didn't do. And here I am, still standing. If Ian had made that Content Cop, I would have been fine. And the third piece of criticism that I have for Ian here is to say, stop telling us about your growth and show it. That's the one lesson that I've learned on YouTube. How many times have I sat down and told you, I'm working on this, I'm changing, I'm trying to get better? I said it so many times and failed to do it so many times that I drove away a huge chunk of my audience. And now that's what Ian is doing here with these apology tours he's doing on these podcasts, by apologizing over and over on Twitter, apologizing during Creator Clash, and now making apology videos on his main channel. Look, man, I get it. You find your old content cringy. You don't want it out there anymore. You feel like you've changed. It doesn't represent you anymore. Don't draw attention to it by making this type of video. Make entertaining videos. Go back into a sewer and eat some pickles. Hang out with your friends. Film some squirrels. Unbox some stuff and break it. Do the thing that you do as an entertainer. Apology videos are the opposite of entertaining. It's like watching a car wreck happen. You watch it because, it's happening right in front of you, but you don't want to be watching it. You'd rather be entertained. And nobody takes anything good from these types of videos. If you want to fast forward down the road later into Ian's career and you want to see what it's going to look like, it's going to look very similar to Ethan Klein's. I still love Ethan Klein, even though Ethan has been very critical of me. But if I had to be critical back, the thing that I will say about Ethan is he's made his regrets about his previous things and the way that he's changed a huge portion of his content. He apologizes over and over again and yet keeps making mistakes because he's human and all humans are going to make mistakes. You don't change overnight. You don't get better overnight. If you regret the things that you were doing years ago, most people will relapse from time to time. And so that's what Ethan continues to do. And then he apologizes again. And then he says he's getting better. And then he screws up again. And then he apologizes again. That's absolutely what's going to happen to Ian. Ian is holding himself to such a ridiculous standard that he will not be able to achieve it. And when he does, it's going to be devastating for his career, the same way it's devastating for Ethan Klein over and over and over again, to the point that I would never miss an H3 podcast. I would never miss this show. And I stopped watching it years ago because so much of what Ethan was doing was apologizing, then making the same mistake, and then apologizing for it again over and over and over again, and it just stopped being fun to watch. If you want to fast forward even further down Ian's path or Ethan's path, you're going to arrive at me, somebody who did this relentlessly for damn near half a decade, to the point that my name is ultimately fully sullied in the YouTube community to the point of most people won't even click on my face anymore when they see it in their feed. I do not want that for Ethan Klein, and I definitely don't want that for Idubbbz. And finally, I know a lot of people in my Twitter timelines and stuff will mention his marriage to his girlfriend, Anissa, and say that that's the cause of all of this. I'll just be honest with you. I don't know that it is. Who he dates, who he marries, who he loves seems so insignificant to me because that's not what I care about. I don't want him to change any of that stuff. I just want him to go back to being an entertainer. I want him to go back to being confident and goofy and fun and silly. And I know he can do those things without being, quote, end quote, cruel, or that he can do those things without any bigotry. And I really, really want that for him. And I don't think Anissa's the reason he's unable to do those things. So to me, she's just an irrelevant part of this story. If she's relevant to you, that's for you, and it's not for me. At the end of the day, if I had a moment to give advice to Idubbbz, it would be simply this. Change however you want to change, and change your content however you want to change it. But don't tell me about it. Show me the change. That's what I'm interested in. And do it while being entertaining. Show me the goofy, confident kid that I loved watching that you were on YouTube all those years ago. And I know you can do that again, regardless of whether or not you set all of the negativity and all of the bigotry aside. The majority of us that watched you didn't watch you because you were a bigot. We watched you in spite of it. I didn't like Lenny Bruce because Lenny Bruce said the N-word. I liked him because he fought for what he believed in, and what he believed in was his rights as a comedian. I don't like Louis C.K. because he masturbated in front of a bunch of women. I like Louis C.K. because he's introspective and funny and makes me look at the world in interesting ways, and I generally laugh when I do. And I sure as shit don't watch Dave Chappelle because I agree with his opinions on trans people. I watch Dave Chappelle because he's entertaining, even when I disagree with him. And that's the Ian I loved. That's the Idubbbz I miss when I say I miss old Idubbbz. Now, that's one man's opinion. I know that I could be wrong, and if I am, I know you're going to let me know in the comments section below. Tell me what you think about the situation. Tell me where you agree with me and where you disagree with me. If you leave a timestamp, I'll probably be more likely to interact with that video, and I'm going to pin my favorite comment. So say something interesting, and I'll be sure to pin somebody in the first 24 hours. As always, thanks for watching. I love you very much, and I will speak with you again soon.